How's it going, everybody? I've got a new project today. I'm sure it won't all happen today, but I just got home with it. Found it for sale, pretty cheap for a complete machine, or at least mostly complete. I've had a couple of these old Polarises before. In general, older Polarises seem to not fit and work as well as some of the older Japanese machines, in my opinion, but I don't know, there's still something I like about them. These little machines here, it's just two-wheel drive. It's a Trail Boss 250 and it's two-stroke, and it's just chain drive, but there's just something about the simplicity of it that's kind of neat. And two strokes are a dying breed, so it's always kind of neat, you know, to come across one every now and then at least. I pretty much went and bought this thing. I really didn't look it over that hard when I was there. It's cold and windy out. We kind of agreed on price before I went. And honestly, about all I did was turn it over by hand. It spins over smooth, but it didn't feel like it had any compression. The guy said, oh, the spark plug's out of it. So that's all I know. It's not locked up. I think the belt cover's kind of loose. But we'll walk around it, take a quick look. He said the tires pumped up, or he said they held air. That's what he told me. I don't think they're gonna hold air. They might blow up while you got the air nozzle on them, but that's probably about it. They don't look too bad at the moment, but that's just because they're old hard tires. I think those are original tires, probably. I can't swear to it, but I think that's maybe what came out on these. And I really like how good the plastic and everything looks on it. And honestly, how could you not like that color scheme? It's just pretty cool. It's the teal and purple and blue. It's kind of neat, you know. So I really don't think it's been used that hard. It's just that people don't take care of stuff. You know, it's not been run into any trees or anything. The racks and bumpers are straight. It does have front and rear racks. Some of these just had a rear. Some of them may not have had any racks. I don't know. But we'll do a quick walk around here. And like I said, I've not seen this much more than you all have yet. We just pushed it in the truck. Seat doesn't look too bad. It's got a couple rips in it, but I think the bottom of it's solid, which is nice. So worst case, seat cover would take care of that. I'll set it out of the way. It's missing the air box. I don't know if I've ever bought one of these old two-strokes that wasn't missing the air box. I have an air box, but I don't know if it'll fit this model. Doesn't look too bad down in there. This is the transmission. This is the inner clutch cover. These are the cables for the starter, power and ground. Not exactly sure what's going on there. Just yeah, that may be power for. I guess this will be the power for the main wiring harness, and then this will be your neutral light down here, that little switch. I think that, yeah, looks like we got forward, reverse, and neutral there. The back wheels are kind of stuck on it right now. That's why I didn't unload it with the ramps. They don't really want to spin. I don't know if this brake's, you know, sticking or stuck or what. Here's the shifter. Forward, neutral, reverse. Some of these I think had a low range. I don't know what the stipulations on that was. I don't know what years that was a thing and what years were just forward, neutral, reverse like this one. He had this listed as a 1986. I don't believe it's an 86. I think it might be like a 96. Let's check the transmission oil. Well, I think Let me zoom in. Maybe. I think it does have some in it because that's wet. It's probably not as high as it should be, but it's somewhat clear. And like I said, if it's got some in it at all, that would kind of surprise me. So that would be good if it does. Here's where the pull start should be. It does spin over. That noise is the clutch rubbing the case over there. It's got a spark plug in it. He said it didn't, but it does. So I don't know, that's probably not good because it doesn't feel like it's got much compression. It's got the McPherson struts. Everything looks pretty straight up here. It's got a little skid plate that I don't think I've ever seen on one. I don't know if it's factory or not. That tire, I don't know if it's it's got a bunch of plugs in it. I don't know if it's holding any air or not. It's missing this plastic piece here that goes around the tank. But luckily it has the other part. I think that one, it might just be white. But these are the colored pieces that would match, so I'm glad it at least has those. There's not a lot to see over here, just clutch cover. But all the plastic's in good shape. I think it'll clean up pretty nice. The wheels aren't too bad, a little bit of rust here and there. It does have the little hitch on it. It's got the tail light. It's got this cover, which I'm not sure. Maybe something's broke here. I don't know how that catches exactly. I'll have to look at it. But at least it does have it. I don't know. I think it just, well, no, not sure. I have to look at that more later. Got some bracket stuff. I think that's a fuel tank bracket. Yeah, that goes on the tank. I'm not sure what that one's for. There should be two of these, but I'm only seeing the one. They bolt here and come up and put the plastic bolts to them. I think it's missing the key switch. He said it had wiring problems, which obviously it does have wiring problems. But he said it didn't have spark and told me that, I asked if, is the engine transmission good? Yeah, it's good. Well, he really had no idea because he didn't even know if the electric start worked, and he didn't know that the pull start went on the other side over there. So anyway, I've got a lot of digging around to do to see what I've got. Probably might as well start by getting this plastic off, and then I'll maybe try to see a little more about the wiring, see if the starter will spin it over. If it does, maybe we'll have to see about testing the compression. So then I'll just have to inspect a little more and see if it's worth fixing or not. So pretty much everything's loose. Like I said, it does have the spark plug in it, and it is just barely threaded in there. Maybe just about 3 turns or something. And doesn't look like it's done anything for a long time. Yeah. There we go. You can see it's got like, I don't know, kind of lint, cobwebs or something on it. I don't know, maybe I'm blind. I'm not seeing the coil wire right off even. for the ignition coil. And of course they've really done a fine job here, whatever you would call that. I did kind of pull the clutch cover back earlier. It's got a belt on it, but everything's kind of rough looking in there. But I've seen worse. It's not, the clutches aren't oxidized too bad. Maybe they'll be good enough to use. I do have a primary clutch laying around for one of these, assuming that it's good. I think I've even got a flywheel and stuff for one. I don't know if there's any oil in it. Yeah. Can't see it on the phone, but it's got oil in it. This is a switch for the oil light. See, that's the ignition coil there, isn't it? Yeah. Looks like the wire's gone off the back of it. There's where it would be right there. Too bad they didn't leave that for me, but I may have an ignition coil that just I could test with at least. I think that's the plug for the front headlight. This, yeah, this is the CDI plug here. It's not plugged in, and that's what these wires go to and from, so that's a problem. Voltage regulator, rectifier here, and just a little junction box type deal right here. So the wiring on these are somewhat simple. Mostly I probably just need to make sure I don't short anything out where they've tied everything together. So but very first I need to determine if the starter works. The starter never works on these. It's down in the bottom, it gets filled with oil from crank seals leaking and stuff. And it's back in here. Can't tell much about it, but this is your oil injection system. You see it moves with the throttle. It meters more oil, more throttle you give it. Usually those are pretty reliable. Basically though, I need to see if the starter will work. If it will, I can pretty easily do at least a quick compression test. If not, I have to find me a string or something to kind of use my pull start, such as it is. So let me round up a couple things and we'll see what we can do here. Alright, I'm going to use my little jump pack and see if I can get it to turn over. The starter solenoid's not hooked up. I should be able to go straight to the starter wire and the ground basically. Should be sending power to the starter right now, but it's not doing anything. Well, I don't expect it to work. I'm gonna hit it a little, if I can reach it. Yeah, no luck there. I did go ahead and pull the clutch cover out. All the bolts were out. Of course, we got a little mouse nest going on. Hopefully he didn't ride home with me. So I'd say this thing's been sitting a good while. Couldn't get the starter to work. So I think I might thread the plug in and see if I can find some string. I can kind of makeshift a pull start just to see what's going on. So I'm gonna try that next. I guess if I feel like it's got some compression with the plug, then I'll put the compression gauge on it and see what I got. So I put the plug in it with a little shot of WD-40 in the cylinder. Kind of turned it over by hand. To me, it doesn't feel like it really has any compression or you know, not much. Kind of found me a pull start cord just to try to make do with here, if it will. I haven't tried it yet. I don't expect to feel any real compression out of this thing. I don't know, maybe it feels a little better than I expected. I guess I'll just put the compression gauge on it and pull it a few times and see if I can get anything out of it. I've got my compression gauge hooked up. I'm gonna pull it a few times off camera because it'll take 8 or 10 pulls probably to tell much about what kind of compression it's got. I'm still saying it's probably pretty low, but you know, all I'm gonna do is pull it a few times and see. I really wish the electric start worked, but I'll pull it over some and report back with what we've got. There was no fuel in the tank. Like I said, no air box. This thing's been sitting a while. I'm sure the carburetor's nasty. So we'll just see what we get here. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit impressed. We've got about 110 pounds of compression, which I'm not sure what new should be on these, but I don't think it's much more than about 130. You know, on a fresh top end. So I'm happy about that for sure. I think I pulled it about 4 times, and on the first pull it was about 90. So I really think it's got potential to run. For sure, we just got to figure out the electrical ignition. Don't know if the clutch is, I'd say the secondary clutch is probably okay, and that's not stuck, so as long as the weights will swing out. I bought one before that had a stuck weight, and it would rev and go, but it never really shift out good. So still got some mouse nest stuck in the belt, looks like. But I think that's probably usable. I still am of the opinion that this doesn't have a ton of miles on it. Obviously there's no odometer, but if I could get it to run okay, I wouldn't care to buy the few things that are missing to make it look nice. So kind of like that teal color. This rack's broke. It's, I guess, loose down here, and it's broke from the weld over here. I can easily fix that. It can be welded back up. The rack's good and straight. I don't really know how they did that, but it's got some years on it, so I would expect a few things like that. So I'm gonna dig around the wiring a little more. If I can find my used ignition coil, I don't know if there's a chance we could get any sparking going on or not. It'd be awesome to hear it run on a little shot of starting fluid or a little bit of mixed gas, if I can pour a little down the plug hole or something. So I'm gonna fiddle around some more and we'll see where we can get with it. So cleaned up the spark plug just a little. And the good news is I've found a brand new used ignition coil. I knew I had one. This is for a Suzuki, if I recall, but I believe it should work okay on here. The wire, I think, is too short to get from where the coil is supposed to be bolted, you know, to the actual plug. The coil wire is just not long enough, so I'll have to makeshift a ground, you know, and I believe I shouldn't need any battery power or anything, assuming that the CDI and everything is good on here. That's a big assumption, but if I can get spark, there's a chance we can hear it run today. So then I'll probably just order the correct ignition coil and keep this one for testing purposes, because the person always needs a couple good new used parts laying around. So I'm gonna dig into this electrical now. So I got my new used coil just mounted here, and it's grounded good. It's pretty solid. I've made me a little jumper that plugs in here, which normally plugs into the factory coil right there. Plug my little CDI back in. And so I think this wire probably is the ground. I'm not looking at any diagrams or anything yet. I'm just trying to go off of what I feel like is correct. I think if you ground that wire, that kills the coil probably. So I've got 3 wires out of the coil, a brown and white, a white, and a black and red. They're all right here. Somebody just cut them or something, but they're, you know, they're tied back together. They're not touching anything. All these other wires should just be stator for like charging system, I believe. And I'll probably get them where they're not touching each other, but I don't think those are going to matter for what I'm doing. And then I've got my plug stuck in there. Try to get it set up where we can see if it sparks. I'm gonna pull it over and see what happens. If it doesn't, I'll regroup and maybe dig into some wiring. Hopefully y'all can see that. I'm gonna pull it over. I don't know if I can get that just a little better spot. Maybe that'll work. It's pretty dark under there, so maybe you can see. And I'm gonna pull it over and hopefully it sparks. I think we had a good spark. That's awesome. I'm gonna pour some gas in. It's pretty high tech. I got some mixed gas. I'll pour just a little bit in there. It'll probably be way too much, but we'll try that right there. If that works out, I'll work on the carburetor. I just like to hear it run first. It seemed to have spark though, so let's see what happens here. I'm not sure this thing doesn't snap on like it should. Let's see what we got, I guess. I'll be darned. Ain't that something? Very first pull with a little gas in it, fired right up. These O2 strokes are pretty neat, you know. I know they're outdated. I know they're a little bit loud, noisy, vibrate, smoke, but they've got a lot of merit. I mean, they're just cheap and simple. I mean, that engine's pretty small considering, you know, what it's moving. So, okay, well, I guess I need to take the carburetor off and see what it looks like inside and regroup on it. That would be I mean, I'm really happy with what we've heard. if I could get a little gas to the carburetor and hear it run on the carburetor, that would be even better. So let's see what happens. I'll fool with the carburetor a little bit. I did cheat a little. I left the throttle cable and everything on. I'm gonna see if I can get the bowl off. Hopefully it's not terrible dirty in there. These have two little floats in them. They're kind of a little different than your standard carburetor. The oil injection line is in bad shape. I need to replace it before I try to use the oil injection. If the oil injection is not working, I may just mix gas and kind of get rid of that, but we'll see. The oil injection is nice when it, if everything's functioning right. Kind of nice not to have to mix gas, and the oil lasts forever in these things, which kind of sounds bad, but I mean, they run like that. They don't have trouble, so can't really argue with success. Still need to figure out exactly what year this is. I think I mentioned he said it was an 86, but I believe it might be something more like a 96. Oh yeah, that's bad. Bad. Oh, it smells terrible. See the chunks laying in there? There's the two floats. And then also in here, it's really bad. So the bowl gasket is still okay. I'm gonna clean everything up best I can right now. See if I can get it back together and see if we can make it run on this carburetor. If I have to buy a kit later, I will. I may actually have one, can't remember. We'll see what we got here. This is terrible. It's not gonna cooperate and stand up for me, but you can see just the sludge in there. And then these little caps, they pop off of the float pins here. You can take the floats out. See the bottom of the floats have been sitting in that junk. So I'm gonna scrub this out, then I'll try my best to get the jets out of the main body and blow through everything and see if I can get this all put back together in good enough shape to run. All right, well, it's not beautiful, but I got all the chunks out, or at least most of them, and it'll run on that if everything else is okay. So I'm gonna move on to the main body and clean it up. So here's a quick shot of the main carb body here. That was never gonna run without taking the carb off, which is kind of why I didn't try it. I knew it had been sitting a long time. The float valve was not stuck. It had gas in it, so somebody had tried to put some gas in it at some point. But that right there is, been down in all that junk that was in the bottom of the bowl. And I don't think it's too hardened up, but definitely gonna have to be cleaned out. We can make that look a lot better pretty quick and put it back together. So I'll show you a little trick I was taught a long time ago. If you use a spring-loaded center punch, this one was my grandfather's, my dad gave it to me. It's a made in USA Blue Point center punch. You can get them at Harbor Freight for $5 or something. They're not expensive, but they've got a little tip on them. This pin is a snug fit in these two little towers here, and sometimes it's tough to get it out without putting a lot of pressure on it. So if you'll take your center punch and push it down, I don't have a good enough hold on it. Drives it right out. So pretty simple little trick. It works well, and it keeps you from kind of, pushing with pliers or putting a bunch of pressure on these to keep you from breaking them. So works pretty well that way. So I got it looking decent. Got the jets cleaned out, you can see through them good. That's would be what the float pushes on here. Everything's working smooth. The needle valve is up in behind there, you can see. The needle valve that came out, if I can get a shot of it, it was pretty trashed. It's got a ring around it where the rubber's kind of like tore up. I've not really seen one like that. I've seen them kind of like with an indentation where they've been in there a long time. But I had a new used one of those. And so I put it in for the time being. We'll see if it seals up. If it doesn't seal up, it's no big deal. I'll buy a carb kit or whatever, but I may need to anyway. But it should run just fine on what we've got here. So I'm gonna slap everything back together and try to get a little fuel to it. We'll see if it'll run. Okay, the carburetor's full of gas. I know that because it was running out the overflow. The needle valve's obviously not sealing, but it's probably going to take a few tries for me to get it started with that pull rope. I have to wind it back up each time. If I can get it started, I'd just like to hear it run for a minute. I'm probably not going to try to move it yet. The tires are flat. It may have a brake dragging in the back. I don't know. It doesn't want to roll real easy. I've got a makeshift tank hanging on the handlebar over there. So let's see what happens. This is a good first try anyway. Okay, I turned this thing around. It's getting really bad smoky in here already. It's not wanting to run off the carburetor. I thought I had everything cleaned out on it. I'm gonna probably have to double check. I think it should be running okay. It should sit there and idle. So I want to mess with it a little and see what I maybe missed or what's going on with it. And as soon as I get that done, we'll try to start it again. Okay, I messed with the carburetor some. Still can't really find anything wrong in there. I'm going to drain the crankcase just in case maybe it's full of gas or has old gas in it or something. The crankcase on these can fill up with fuel if the float valve sticks, the needle valve sticks open or leaks. And like I said, there was no gas at all in the tank, but there was gas in the carburetor. I'm just going to drain that to be sure it's not drawing out of there, because I noticed some moisture around the plug here. And I don't have the plug all the way tight, but it's snugged in by hand. But I kind of don't think it should have that much fuel coming out there. So I may go ahead and just drain the crankcase just to be sure. So I think this right here is the crankcase drain. I've got a 10mm socket here. It came loose, that's good. You can also see the starter right here beside it. That's kind of why they're all right down in the water, and you know, anything that can get to them is right there. No, it seems dry. Okay, just wanted to check. Plug's really wet. Probably can't see it too good. Anyway, I think it's already fouled the plug. I've just got too much fuel to it somehow, so let's clean it up and try again. Well, the pull start just don't work too good for me when you're trying to get something going like this, so I found a bolt that fit in that pull start drive there, and it's also in with the one-way pull start clutch, so once it starts it'll release. So I've got a drill running the bolt. Let's see if we can do any good. It was trying to run. I don't know if it's flooded bad or what. Well, it took off for a second. It did seem flooded because it took it a while to ever get going. I don't know how much gas is in my car, but I can't really leave it draining because I don't think the needle valve's sealing good enough. So let's try again. Alright y'all, I think I just saw the problem. Possibly at least. I don't have the plug in it, so I'm not sure that's going to affect it. I just saw a spark jumping from this boot to the ground strap on the coil. Let's see if it does it again. Yeah, that don't help spark at all. Like none. Let me tape that up, try again. So it's the next day. I've looked at this thing a little bit more. The engine is salvageable. I think the crank bearings are okay. It may need crank seals just by the way it's acting. It'll run at high RPM sometimes, but it won't idle at all. even with the throttle blade closed, it wants to rev. That indicates an air leak to me. But some people say the compression's a little low at 110. It's possible, but I think it should run. But I kind of just looked around this a little harder today. I noticed I pumped the tires up. They did take air for a minute. I think 3 of them might still have some air in them. It would roll a little piece and then the back wheels would lock up. So I kind of just got to looking at it. And so this is what I found. Let me try to hold my hand steady. You can even see the belt get tighter. That bearing is just shot in the transmission. So the shaft for the secondary clutch in the transmission, the bearings are shot. It's just got a lot of walk and play. And so, you know, here we are, and this is where you kind of have to evaluate things sometimes. I've got some wiring fixed, which is no big deal. That's a pretty cheap fix. Put a coil in it. That's cheap. Not too big a deal, I think, to get the ignition going. Well, properly. It's working right now, but needs a belt. The engine, I think, you know, needs crank seals at the least, which is cheap, but it's a fair amount of labor. Transmission needs taken apart. Probably needs all the bearings if it needs any. Needs all the tires. I've walked around. All the shocks are bad. See how it just bounces. Does the same thing in the front. The rear's a little worse since it's swing arm, but needs this pull start cover over here. None of the brakes work. And there are still some unknowns like the oil injector and missing a couple little plastic pieces and things. I haven't really checked the bearings much on it. But at this point, we just gotta call it off on this one. I've not spent any money other than $200 that I spent to buy it, and a little bit of fuel I spent to go get it. And I think it'll bring that in parts easily. Somebody else, I think, would buy it and use it for parts, or it can be fixed. It's in good shape. As far as the frame and body and everything go, it would make a nice one. But to be economical, you really need a parts machine, or you just kind of need to really want to have this project, because it's a project. I think I mentioned the guy told me the engine transmission was good. I kind of figured he probably didn't know what he was talking about. He said no spark was the only issue, and he said it needed a wiring harness. Of course, I'm not buying a wiring harness if I can fix one, but so be wary of what you're buying. I knew going in that I was probably going to have more trouble than what he told me was wrong with it. But if you're looking at buying something like this, and I spent $200 buying this, well, that's cheap. It seems like a cheap four-wheeler. It is a cheap four-wheeler, but I don't know. We've got $10 worth of crank seals, and if you did have to do a top end, assuming the cylinder's not bad and you could possibly just hone it and put some new rings in it, you're probably looking at $40 there. But I'd say to do the crank seals and top end, you're looking at 3 or 4 hours of labor. Just guessing. But then you've got to pull the transmission out, and you're probably going to spend several dollars on bearings for that transmission, because you might as well put all of them in it. So I think $100 Might get you by on that, maybe, assuming nothing else in there is damaged, but who really knows? And then you need all 3 shocks. And so, you know, you can figure at least an hour to replace all 3 of those, but possibly more, because the fronts are struts and they're a little more aggravating. You got the wheel bearings and everything kind of on them. Time you buy all this stuff, and those are just the known issues, but you're going to end up, there's no way you're getting this thing going in the tires, of course. There's no way you're getting it going for much less than $800 to $1,000 total cost. And like I said, there's still some unknowns. Nobody's ever driven, you know, I've never driven it, so. And I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I normally don't try to fool with the older Polarises because they've caused me the most trouble, it seems like. I don't know what it is about them. I still think they're neat machines, and this one has a lot of good parts. It's well worth the money just in parts. If I had one of these that I was wanting to keep going, and I could have bought this for what I paid for it, would have been a really nice thing to have sitting there just for parts. Because like I said, the body, the racks, the seat, all that stuff's pretty good. But I also don't know if I mentioned, but none of the brakes work on this, so you know, that can be really time consuming in itself. But for me, this would have made a cool video series, but we're just gonna have to let it go because it's just not worth my time, and somebody else probably could have a lot better use for it. Or like I said, if you don't have any other projects and you just want a cool winter project, this would be a neat one. I still think it would be neat fixed up. But you have to really want it to start spending that much time and money on something like this. So with that said, this has been the one and only video on this machine for me. Might try to sell it to somebody. I may end up just parking it in the weeds, and I'd have it for parts if I ever need anything. I don't know. I'll figure that out, but I wish this had gone a little better and we could at least maybe got it to run a little bit more. But we did hear it run, did kind of figure out what a couple little issues were at least. So all I'm out is just some time. So we're gonna shut it down right there before I get carried away, and that's kind of one reason I wanted to look it over some more before I went to buy any parts for it. So if you're thinking about a project like this, just make sure you know what you're getting into. You know, sometimes it looks pretty glamorous on YouTube, but that's not always the case. So with that said, appreciate y'all watching. Hopefully the next project will turn out a lot better. I've still got to get my truck engine together. Just now kind of getting all the parts rounded up for it. I've got everything I need for the rebuild kit, so that won't be a big in-depth video, but I hope to goodness that I can at some point get that thing back together. I've drug my feet pretty bad on it, I guess. All right, well, appreciate y'all watching, and we'll talk to you next time.